So the past couple of years has been very challenging, especially for the middle class. Not only that the middle class had to face an economic environment where there is not enough jobs out in the job market, but the next thing is that the inflation right now is getting more and more expensive. We can see that the prices of rice has increased quite significantly. On top of that, we could see the price of chicken, vegetables, so on and so forth, right? So even food prices are getting more and more expensive. So I think personally, for me, I have seen a couple of my friends, right? So there are some of my friends which actually lost their job during the whole pandemic, and from then onwards, he never quite recovered. And right now, he's actually doing all sorts of different things in order for him to actually make some extra income. So that's the first group. The second group of my friends is those that actually had a job and then they kind of lost their job, and they luckily managed to find another job, but the current job does not pay as high as the previous job, right? And there is a third bucket of my friends which are not affected at all. But all in all, even though someone goes into the first bucket where they don't have any income, or the second bucket they have less income, or the third bucket the income is not quite affected, but the whole thing of it all is that inflation right now is getting a bit more expensive, and the cost of living is getting a little bit more expensive. And with that, a lot of people are struggling right now. So I think with that, we can see that let me ask you guys, right? After getting the salary, right? After paying our things like our house expenses, our water, electricity, food, tuition for maybe the kids, loans, so on and so forth. Do you guys feel like you have enough for the rest of the month? I actually ask this question very regularly to a lot of my students, and they tell me that it's not enough, right? And in fact, more and more, I'm beginning to find out people are actually taking two jobs, and right now, two jobs is actually the new norm when it comes to this current economy, right? So I think one of the things that I'm going to talk a little bit about are the three mistakes a lot of middle income people make. And this is after observing things like talking to my students, right? And these students could be those that are working in the corporate environment. I've also spoken to students which are already retired, and I have also managed to speak to students which are going to retire. So I already spoke to a big variety of students, and these are the top three mistakes I notice middle income people make that maybe keeps them maybe poor, I guess. So I think the first mistake, and this one is a big one, right, is not knowing how much of money comes in versus how much of money goes out, right? So what I noticed is a lot of my friends, when I was much younger, right, this was many years back, I still remembered like a lot of my friends, we had this particular habit, right, where we get our salary, right? The first and second week, right, we would have enough money, right? And this is the time when I noticed that the first week, it'll be going for movies, be going for food, it'll be going for, restaurants, so on and so forth, right? Second week, also the same, but maybe at a lesser degree, right? Where you find something nice, or you find a gadget, or you find something like a new shirt, and people tend to spend, right? That being said, on the third and the fourth week, right, what tends to happen is that since a lot of the money is being spent on the first and second week, the third and the fourth week is very, very difficult, right? So what I've noticed is that if we are not aware of the expenses or of the money that we actually spend, and also the money that we earn, it's very difficult for us to actually focus or tackle on the particular problem, right? So I think the analogy I like to give over here is that I don't know whether any of you guys tried to actually join a new gym. Every time when we join a gym, right, the first thing they'll do is maybe measure our weight, right? We'll be going on a weighing scale, then they'll measure, how big our arms are, how big our tummies is, so on and so forth, right? So it's the same thing, right? And with the gym, right, when we work out maybe 2 or 3 times a week, right, and then after maybe 1 or 2 months down the road, if we put on a bit of if we put on a bit of weight, this is where the gym instructor will probably double or triple the weights, right? Or but if we manage to lose weight, right, that's actually going towards the right direction. It's the same thing with regards to money, right? Without having a proper budget, or without having a proper tracking system, it's very difficult to see when the money is coming in versus when the money is coming out. And what I tend to notice is people would spend whatever is in an account, right? Whatever cash is left, they just spend. And as I mentioned, by the third or fourth week, a lot of the money is not in the account anymore. And this is where some may struggle, right? So I think one of the best ways is to have a budget, right? And let me tell you a very, very cool story, right? Ever since when I started teaching financial literacy, so on and so forth, right? Even I catch myself, or even I want to be a better version, right? So typically in the mornings, what I tend to do, or when I first started having a physical office location, right? Or when I first started having to go back to the office, what I used to do is I used to take the taxi, the Grab or Uber to the office and back and forth, right? So I like to sleep, so I tend to wake up a little later than usual. So what tends to happen is that maybe it's 30 ringgit to the office and 30 ringgit back from the office. That'll be 60 ringgit, right? But assuming right now, if I have changed one habit, right, which is instead of so right now what I'm doing, right, is that in the mornings I'll take the Grab, right, to the office, but in the evenings when it's less time sensitive, this is where I take the MRT or the LRT, right, and this helps me save quite a lot of money, right, and assuming right now if I get to save about 30 ringgit per day, right. In 1 month, it'll be 900 ringgit. And in 1 year, it'll be 10,000 ringgit. Can you imagine that? And in 10 years, it'll be 100,000 ringgit, right? And I did a small little calculation, right? If I invested about instead of keeping aside money and not doing anything, right? What if I were to invest that money? Definitely the returns will be much more, right? This is where not only I'll save, but there is also the compounding effect on investing, right? And I think a lot of people have been asking me, what's the best way to invest, or, to teach on how to invest, right? But I feel that before I even go towards teaching investing, I think it's best that we cover the very basics first, right? So once we already covered this, we already have some money saved, this is where I'm going to maybe proceed towards teaching investing, right? So that's mistake number one, right? Where we tend to, we don't have a basic awareness on how much of money comes in versus how much of money goes out, right? I think the second error, which I notice, is that some actually live beyond their means, right? And, there was one time I actually heard someone told me this, as long as they have cash, as long as they have their particular credit card, say if it's about like a 3,000 ringgit credit card, right? So they equate that 3,000 as cash, right? And I'm going to tell you guys, having credit is not the same as having cash. The whole thing of it all, every time when we use our credit card towards paying something, what tends to happen is that we have to pay interest on the credit card. And there's this particular study, if you watch my earlier videos, which says that 90% of Malaysians have some form of loans, right? And as I mentioned, guys in their 20s, they tend to have a educational loan. They tend to buy their first car, and this is where they also have a personal loan. And guys or girls in their 30s, what they tend to what loans they tend to take is that after they have already paid their educational loans, this is where sometimes some of them may get married and they want to buy their first house. And at the age of 50, most people will have their housing loan, their credit card loan, and also their car loans, right? And if you're wondering, How is it possible, right? A lot of car loans will actually last for 9 years, right? The whole thing of it all is that this is where someone maybe wants to buy a car for maybe their significant other or also their kids, right? So basically, all I'm saying is that throughout a person's life, they will have some form of loans, right? And what makes it even more difficult, right, is that right now, even to buy furniture, even to buy a phone, even to buy a television, there's this thing called 12 easy payments, right? Where people can actually buy things without actually paying it right up in advance. They can actually break down the payments. And imagine this with me: if someone were to take a credit card loan, on top of that they have a personal loan. On top of that, they have a housing loan. On top of that, they have the car loans, and on top of that, they even take a loan for their furniture, right? As many of you guys know, right? Every time when they increase the interest rates or when they increase the OPR, what tends to happen is that the cost of loan will get more and more expensive. And this is one of the reasons why quite these past 2-3 years, it has been very difficult, right? The first was the increase on the OPR or the interest rates. And every time when they increase the OPR, we have to remember that if someone takes a loan, their cost of loan or their monthly payment will get even higher, right? And that's at the start of every month, right? On top of that, there's the inflation, so on and so forth, right? So living beyond our means is can be a bit expensive, right? And I just want to maybe talk a little bit about why this is happening, right? I think number one, we live in a relatively materialistic world where every time when we go back and forth the office, right? I read this particular article or this internet article which says that a lot of people actually they will go through thousands of ads, on a daily basis, right? And if you're wondering to yourself, wait a minute, I actually, I'm always on my phone, right? So I always take the public transport and I'm on my phone. Even when we are scrolling on our phone, our Facebook, our YouTube, so on and so forth. Every time when we scroll, there is definitely ads here and there. Some of them are straight out ads, and some of them are product placements. So everywhere we go, we can actually see ads, right? And quite honestly, that's number one. And number two, what makes it very difficult to save money is that things right now is just so easy to buy. I'll give you an example, right? Back in the day when I wanted to buy something like a can of tuna, right? I needed to, and say if I didn't have enough money in my wallet, right? I think the first thing I have to do is maybe change, right? Second, I need to actually drive to the bank, withdraw the money. Third, I need to go to the supermarket, and then after that, I have to go down, walk on foot, right? Find the aisle which actually sells tuna, and then I'll go pay, and then after that, on top of that, I guess go home, and that's the overall process, and it's so cumbersome. If we have to buy one item, there's a high chance we probably won't buy it. But that being said, today, a lot of apps makes it very easy for us to buy things, right? And we can just tap a couple of buttons, right? And what will happen is that eventually we'll get whatever, our tuna. We can buy things like furniture, we can buy things like toys, we can buy so many wonderful things. So, as I mentioned, right? One of the reasons why a lot of people are living beyond their means, as I mentioned, is that right now we are bombarded with so many ads, right? And these ads will be on our social media platforms, right? And this could be product placements, or this could be things like ads which we see, right? And on top of that, it's so easy to buy things, right? As I mentioned, with a couple of taps on our phone, we will get that particular item, all right? And in fact, I just want to share with you this particular story, right? Not too long ago, I came across this article about someone which retired that had about 700,000 ringgit in his EPF. That being said, he managed to spend all that money within 3 years, right? 3 years. I mean, to put things into perspective, 700,000 we can actually buy if we are savvy, and if we are very prudent, financially prudent, we can actually buy a house somewhere away from the big city lah, basically, right? And on top of that, with the extra money, we can actually use that for our living expenses. Chances are probably we can probably live maybe 5, 10 years, right? If we're prudent enough. But this person, he managed to spend his 700,000 in retirement money in just 3 years, right? And again, as I mentioned, if a person were to take a loan for many years, right? And towards the end of his retirement, what he wants to do, maybe he pays off his loan. That's the first thing. The second thing he maybe wants to do is maybe take his grandchildren out, or maybe give, buy nice stuff for his kids, right? And maybe that will cost another big chunk, right? And whatever left, he will have to use for the rest of his, his retirement life, right? So I think the main story over here is, try to be financially prudent, right? And this is a story I shared with you about how someone with 700,000 managed to finish his money in just 3 years, right? So I think the third mistake, which I notice a lot of people, or the third habit, right? A lot of people maybe don't take or don't make, is maybe not investing, right? And personally, I still remembered when I was very young, right? I still remembered me and my friends, we all wanted to invest, right? And guys, I'll tell you very honestly, when you first start investing, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. And I still remembered one of my friends. He's an accountant. I was an accountant. And accountants are very very prudent people, right? And out of all my friends, maybe one or two, me and another friend actually started investing, right? And I started investing very young. But I got another friend of mine. He actually started investing. And so happened he bought a unit trust or mutual fund, and that unit trust or mutual fund actually fell in value. And he told himself, he says, "Oh, I'll never do this again," right? He was so scared, and he was talking about the same thing over and over again for months, right? But the whole thing of it all is that he got so traumatized, he never invested. He just never wanted to put his money in any investments, right? Me on the other hand, I just wanted to try, right? I start with a very small amount of money, and then if I lose, okay, and then if I make, then that'd be great, right? And then once I know that it actually makes a little bit of money, then I'll just double down, triple down, so on and so forth, right? And I think why investing is so very important is this particular thing, right? Where right now there's no such thing as job security, right? I think many years ago when I was studying in university, I still remember my dad used to tell me, "Son, just study hard, work hard, and save enough money, right? Once you save enough money, you can retire, right?" And this was back during my dad's era, right? And back then, a lot of people, they used to have only one job, and they will stick at that one particular job. So they are loyal to the company. In exchange, the company gives them job security, right? And this was the employment market back then. And also, I still remembered going to my dad's office, and it was really nice in the sense that it was family, right? Everyone knew each other, everyone knew each other's kids, so on and so forth, right? It was very different back then. That being said, today, when we look today, there's no such thing as job security. And we could see this in the pandemic, where if you have to go, you have to go, right? So I think now more than ever, we need to take care of ourselves, right? And that is one of the reasons why I am of the strongest opinion that we need to start investing, right? As I mentioned to you, if you go, I know if you're caught me like in the middle of the video, go back to the first part of the video. I gave another 2 more advice, right? So in total, number 1, we need to have a financial awareness of how much of money goes in versus how much of money goes out, right? That is very important, right? Second thing is that we need to make sure that we don't spend too much, right? I know, and it's very normal for someone to actually earn 1 ringgit and they spend one ringgit 10 cents, right? So for every 1 ringgit they earn, they spend 1 ringgit and 10 cents. And the whole thing of it all, as I mentioned, credit right now is so easy to come by, right? And the third thing, right? And I hope that you guys take this to heart, right? Please try to invest, or please do invest. The whole thing of it all is that I still remembered during the whole pandemic, right? I was in line. I was waiting for the ATM machine, right? And I still remember it was a long line. And at that point in time, a lot of us were wearing our masks, so on and so forth. We were all covered up and whatnot. And I was at ATM machine. I still remembered very clearly. This an older lady was trying to withdraw money. She couldn't quite withdraw money, right? And she just left the ATM machine. And I realized that she didn't have any money on hand, right? And at that point in time, I felt fortunate in the sense that I managed to withdraw some money, right? So I think the whole thing of it all is that number one, we need to know, or we need to wake up to the reality that there's no such thing as job security. And right now, more than ever, we need to take care of our financial well-being, right? And as I mentioned, saving and investing are two very key components, right? So I guess I am going to end this episode, right? If there's any questions, please do ask.